Okay, I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, April 9th, 2019 meeting of the Edina Parks and Recreation Commission. Janet, can we have a roll call, please?
Yep. Commissioner McCormick? Here. Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Commissioner Darlene?
Here.
Commissioner Good?
Here.
Commissioner McCauley?
Here.
Commissioner Itis?
Here.
Commissioner Osborne?
Here.
Thank you, Janet. We have in front of us in our packets our meeting agenda. Any comments on the meeting agenda? If not, can I have a motion to approve our meeting agenda for the evening?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have motioned and no changes in it. All in favor of our meeting agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? That passes. We have also in our packet our meeting minutes from our Tuesday, March 12th meeting. Can I have a motion to approve our minutes?
So moved. Second.
Any changes, comments on our meeting minutes from March? In that case, all in favor of approval of our meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Community comment. Do we have any community comment this evening? Just some onlookers, but none for comments this evening. Well, welcome. Glad you're here. Reports and recommendations. We'll start out, I believe, Susan, with Park and Rec Enterprise Fund report.
Yeah, so I'd like to introduce Andrea Rich. Andrea is the city's financial analyst. She has been with the city a little over a year, about a year and a half, and Andrea works really closely with our enterprise facilities and has been extremely helpful to our department here the last year and a half. And then I'll let Andrea kind of kick it off. No, I think Janet just wants to get it on.
Now, yes. Thank you for having me. Let's see if I can get this to work. Okay. So what I'm sharing with you tonight is a subset of our quarterly report that goes to council. So Park and Rec is a big piece of that, so I've just carved out the Park and Rec pieces to share with you. It was, I guess in my financial world, a big deal for the fourth quarter of 2018 is that we rolled out a new format. So hopefully it's a little bit more readable, a little prettier, easier to get around in it. Another piece that we tried to do was to put some KPIs in there, so key performance indicators, and just to marry that with the financials. So we have the number of season passes sold plus the dollars related to that. And there are some other, we added in a bit about investments and debt, but obviously that's not Park and Rec related. So just a word of warning, they were preliminary numbers when we presented them. It takes a little while to roll up the year. They won't be final until the audit is complete, so we've got a little ways yet, but the numbers are pretty good. So we'll just start with the first one. It's a good one to start with. It's Braemar Golf Course and Dome, and all the formats will look the same. So you've got the numbers on one side, what we're saying are the KPIs on the other side, and then words. And what we're really trying to do is to tell the story here. So if you look at the numbers and you have a question, and then you can look at the KPIs and it might answer the question, and if it's not there, then you've got a few bullet points to really bring the story all together. So for the golf course and the dome, you might browse down the numbers and you're gonna see always in all of these, we've got prior numbers, current year numbers, and budget that we're comparing, revenues and expenses. You might say, well, why were the golf dome receipts up? And then we could look over at the right and you're gonna see the number of dome buckets. That big spike in 2018, largely due to the weather. If you remember back to spring of 2018, well, about this time we had that snowstorm, so it kept the golfers indoors. Just some other points on here, pointing out the big items. So pro shop sales increased 2018 over 2017. Well, we opened up the new pro shop. And then I also wanted to point out cost of goods sold for any people out there trying to calculate a margin on this, that the cost of goods also includes what was going on before we had Red River Kitchen in there, so it's not just cost of goods for the pro shop. And then personnel services, year over year, the difference there is what we were able to tag back to capital with the redoing of the golf course. Feel free to chime in. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me.
To Andrea, maybe one question. This is Greg on that one. So when you say the column that says percent spent, is that in fact a comparison of budget versus actual?
Yes.
Okay, so it could be revenues coming in or it could be expenses going out, but it's just that comparison versus budget.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we'll move on to the arena in the field. Again, same format. You can give me your feedback, I guess, on the format. We'll be working on Q1 here shortly. And what we've done here, I guess across the board for KPIs, the KPIs are really the revenue drivers. So if you've ever looked at our budget book, there are some other key performance indicators, but what we've done here is try to marry revenues up with these measures that we're grabbing. So for the arena, it's our percentage utilization. We've broken it out into prime time and non-prime time. And then you can see it rolling over into the numbers as well. Aquatic Center. We're measuring big ticket items again, so our KPIs, the number of season passes and the number of daily admissions. And you start to, again, see the story. So season tickets, or let me say, the number of season passes went down slightly from 2017 to 2018. Revenue went up a little bit. Prices went up a little bit, just enough to offset that slight decline. And then if you look at the comparison between the season passes and the daily admissions for 2018, you see that big spike in daily admissions. So we think, again, weather related. It was a kind of rough start to the beginning of the pool season in 2018. So just long enough that people put off buying that season pass and came in for the daily admission.
So Andrea, what's in the commodities line? It's quite a bit different than the budget. Just curious as to what gets put there.
First, I'll say we've been trying to do a better job, and we're working on the current budget now, we definitely want to put the expenses where they belong. So not necessarily where the budget is, but you want to get the expenses into the right budget. So you're going to see the transition, I guess, as we're doing that. In the past, somebody may have coded an invoice to a line that had a budget and not really to the line that it went to. But to answer your question, commodities are going to be things that we buy. So not services, but it's going to be repair parts, office supplies, chemicals, things like that.
I had a question. Now that you're going into your second year of doing this, I think it comes up quite a bit, at least for me. We've got a couple of these different enterprise facilities, and it looks like for the aquatic center, we projected a loss. When we're doing some of the financial planning, are we just assumptive of that risk and we're okay with it, or are we working with Susan and the team to find a way? I mean, obviously the idea would be to be cash flow neutral, but we projected 10,000, pretty close to that. But I mean, it was a loss out of the gate. So,
Couple of things on that. So what we're showing here, that bottom line, is the operating income and loss. There are some items below that. So it's not picking up donations, realized gain or loss on the sale of a capital asset, investment income, transfers, things like that are all below the line, so you're not seeing those. And as far as, I guess if an enterprise breaks even or doesn't, I think it's a delicate balance. And it's tough because expenses, when we look at total city budget, expenses are growing. Salary and benefits are growing. Your commodities, things that you're going to go out and buy in the market are growing. So you think, maybe just 3% growth. And the enterprises only have so many revenue line items, and we can only increase fees so much. So there's a balance there.
Plus you've got depreciation in there. So from a cash perspective, it doesn't really give us the view
True.
of the cash generated. But it does give you kind of an idea of whatever we invested, are we getting a return on it, right? Yeah.
And we'll get to the taking depreciation out. One of the last slides is the cost recovery measures that we've put into place. So one has it in and one has it out.
Andrea, just a question on depreciation. How is it that we miss that?
We budget every 2 years. And it's not exact for what projects are going on. So you can blame finance department for that. The enterprises don't put in the depreciation budget, we do. And we shoot for close. And in my mind, that would be pretty close.
Okay.
When I say it's not exact, I mean, when you're adding a capital asset or you're retiring a capital asset, and we take half a year in the first year and half a year on the last year, so it moves a little bit. Okay, Edinburgh Park. There are some decreases here, kind of across the board, and what we're contributing that to is an increase in competition in other cities. We can't say that for a fact. That's, I guess, the general feeling of what's going on across the board. Still looks good. It's just something to be mindful of, I guess, something with our capital plan to be mindful of.
Andrea, on the expense line that says personal services, is that employee costs or what's embedded in that number?
It is. It's just salary and benefits.
Just salary and bonuses, okay.
I've
thanks.
struggled with that since I started. Okay, the Art Center. Here's a perfect example of a change that we made to the KPI. So historically, we have tracked the number of class registrations because our revenue line item is class registrations. And what we ran into this year is number of registrations went down and class registration revenue went up. And we had to take a step back and look at this and realize that in your class registrations, your class might be a 30-minute class, your class might be a 3-hour class, and that we priced that based on instructional hour, so that the better measure really is the instructional hour. So that's what you're seeing in orange layered over the green. So the green is the historical class registrations. And then we have the instructional hours on top of there. Same with Centennial Lakes. I will say you probably noticed Centennial Lakes and Edinburgh Park, the association fee line, if you're familiar with the park maintenance fees that the surrounding properties pay. We did go through some true-ups in the last couple years, which played a part in the numbers that you're seeing. So in 2018, we collected $80,000 more of the association fees. For Centennial Lakes, which was just a one-time revenue. That's not something that we'll be repeating. And here's the cost recovery. So in 2018, we implemented 2 calculations for cost recovery. One of them is, if you're looking at the numbers, it is based on that operating income loss line. And the other one is taking that and backing out depreciation, central services, and water, storm, and sewer. So the thought there is that the first one, which is just based on the total operating income or loss, is all inclusive. So that's what we're calling on here. It's the total CR, total cost recovery. And the other one was more of what the management can control. So that's where we're backing out the depreciation, central services, and the water, storm, and sewer. So here are the measures. Again, we came up with the targets for 2018 and 19, and we'll revisit them with this next budgeting cycle. And at the front of the picture, so your orange and tan, those are the targets that we set. And then the back of the picture, your green and your blue, were how we actually came in, is how I look at it, to kind of get a feel for it. Obviously, with the golf course, we didn't adjust the targets for the golf course closure, is what you're seeing here. But everybody else, it makes sense. The story holds true.
So looking at this one, speaking to your line of the story, outside of the golf course, and we know what happened there last year, this is telling us that the management-controlled recovery is almost at or over 100% for every facility. I mean, a little bit under for Art Center and Centennial Lakes, it looks like, right? Am I reading that correctly?
Let me look at that real quick. Art Center, Centennial Lakes are...
The blue bar is
are
management
under.
control, and it looks like it's below the 100% line. Above the target, but I'm
So
looking
those
at
are the-
100% recovery.
The blue
It's not
would be
at
the
100%
actual.
recovery. Yep.
So the target, if you're looking at the management target, would be the beige color.
And I wasn't comparing it to target. I was going back to Matt's question about kind of full recovery, and this is saying, for what we say management could control, again, golf course, we understand the story, but the others are actually either at or pretty relatively close to that 100% recovery, if I'm reading this correctly.
It is, but that's, just to be clear, of the percentage, so not whether or not they have a loss, I guess.
And so
it's
it's
just
measuring
compared to the target, which, yeah, loss does play into it, income or loss.
Art Center would, if we took out depreciation in those line items, they'd still show a loss, is basically what this says, right?
Yes.
So we're just subsidizing it. That just means
Yes.
that we're subsidizing it. Yeah.
So maybe to clarify, what's the percentage on the left-hand side? That's percentage of what?
So, so that is the calculation. So that is the percent of expense that our revenue covers.
Right. So if I'm looking at the Art Center that has a blue bar that is approaching that 100%, that's telling me that the management cost recovery is approaching 100% of expenses.
Yes,
Right.
that's true.
It's above the target, which is good,
It is.
but it's even closing in on covering full expenses, minus depreciation, centralized, other things.
And again, on that top operating income expense line, so it doesn't include anything below the line.
Yep, correct.
Okay. The other note to make on this, when the targets were established, they're not meant to really be set in stone. So if we say target or we say goal, it's an approximate amount. It's something that we're planning toward, but as we all know, things happen out of our control and we have one-time events. So probably rather than adjust the target, what you'll see us do is we'll talk about those differences. But we don't want somebody to make a decision, oh, I can't repair this because then I'm not going to hit my target.
So Andrea, just to a comment you made earlier, did you say that you set the budget for 2 years, every 2 years in advance? So
We do.
there's a budget that was 18-19. Now you'll be looking at 2021?
We have just started
Okay.
that process, and that's here on the last page, just to kind of give you an update of where we are. We have started working on the 2020-2021 budget. Along with that, we'll do a 2019 estimate just to pick up any new news there. It starts with building salary and benefits for everybody, filling in each of the line items, and there's much more detail when you're looking at just contractual or commodities. Those are roll-ups of many, many accounts that we actually budget on. So we'll be building that during April. I'll meet with the general managers in May. We have several layers. It'll go up to Susan in June, and so on and so forth, to ultimately be approved by council first part of December. So the other bullet on here is just, obviously we just finished Q1 and we'll be working on a new quarterly report.
And so, Andrea, do you do 2 years just so people can plan forward, or what's the thinking around the timing of how the budgets are done?
It is. It's planning is one, but it's also try to slot things in there. So we do the capital plan 1 year, and then we do the financial plan in the alternating year, just so everyone's not bogged down trying to do both at the same time. Okay.
Andrea, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I heard you say on the target graph that, again, this was all numbers at the operating level, so none of the expenses below are part of this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know in my budget, that's a lot. That's below that, right? So
It can be, and the reason we didn't include them is they're either not under the control of the enterprise, like investment income. We're making the investments in the finance department, and then they all get allocated out at the end of the year, or also out of their control, but perhaps a one-time, one-off item would be donations. We have no idea how much is going to come in year over year.
But that's revenue. What about expenses?
They can be down there too. It could be, we might have a gain on the sale of a capital asset. We might have the loss on the sale of a capital asset.
But it's not operating expenses that you're
No,
not putting in there.
correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Well, a question out of that is, can you help me understand what a capital asset that you would sell from the Park and Recs department would be?
It's a little out of my area. Susan, I don't know if you can help me. I know that the golf course just had a sale in 2018.
Talking like lawnmowers?
It doesn't happen very often.
Oh yeah, that's like over the old waterways and stuff. But for the most part, those are pretty infrequent, right?
Yes.
Okay. So then that kind of gets me to, and I'm surrounded on this committee by a lot of financially strong people, so I apologize in advance. But my simple math is based off of what we saw for 2018. We were planning for a loss of $840,000, not accounting for the offsets that aren't listed here. And when I look at making a budget for 2021, it would make sense to me that we were trying to find, I understand we can't account for offsets in here, but how do we close that gap so that we get to, because I think the thing that we hear from the community is we have all these great facilities, but they're operating at a loss. So, at the same time, we as a group are wondering, how do we get money for new playgrounds, and how do we find private donation, those types of things. But we're already kind of in a hole to begin with. So I'm wondering if, like 2021, when we do this again, are we going to think of, we might have to take that 8% hike on a aquatic center ticket to try to build some of this stuff up? Are we going to have to find alternative ways to sell packages? I mean, are we going to have to sell more beer at Braemar? Like, I don't know, but I guess maybe this is more of a statement, or maybe this has already been talked about and we really have to kind of get very granular in some of this stuff.
As I said before, it's a delicate balance. We try to be very transparent with the enterprises. And for example, we just in 2018 started allocating their water, storm, and sewer usage to the enterprises to try to get the big picture of how much it does cost us to run these businesses. But at the end of the day, many of them are going to run at a loss, and the city will subsidize that in some way until we don't want to be in that business anymore.
Yeah, and I would just like to add that we look at each enterprise facility, and we are trying to look at ways that either we can generate additional revenue or are looking at some cost savings at all of our facilities. But there is a reason why it's a public facility. There's a lot of private companies that wouldn't want to run ice arenas or like Edinburgh Park, that type of a facility. So, I think the expectation that our enterprise facilities will all be running, recovering 100% of their cost, I think would be an extreme challenge. And we would probably have to set fees at a rate that we would lose a lot of customers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say, Matt, I probably heard both sides of that, a bit of a philosophical debate, right?
Sure.
Should we be running them to be profitable, or I understand that they operate at a loss, and that's part of my tax dollars that support that, and I'm okay with it, right? So there's both sides of it, I guess. So.
Yeah, and I to be fair, I see both sides too. I'm just wondering if, as we're going into this budgeting process, we as a group have looked at the fees and gone line item by line item before, and we've actually asked to just be appraised of ones that are outside of the normal derivation of like a larger percent change. But for me, do we have to get even more granular, because there might be opportunity that we haven't thought about. I just, when you couple this with the idea of what's happening at Arden Park and the community comment around Arden Park and the money that we took to do that, and then you say something like this, we can expect that there's going to be community comment about, okay, so we're going to present this, and the simple math is going to show we weren't expecting to make, that's almost $1 million. That's a lot of money. And so, but at the same time, we are, in simple math, making money on the Arden Park thing. So how is the shell game working? Not to be, that's again, not a financial wizard, but how do we do that without having to use the offsets that aren't on here to, and maybe it's not being about profitable, but how are we trying to make strides to go a little bit more up and to the right, at least with some of this stuff? Because I think there is opportunity, and you spoke to a little bit too. There's only a few things in this community that really generate revenue. Stuff that's not in here is the liquor store, but taxes, those types of things. Mm-hmm. But these are all revenue generating opportunities. So is there an opportunity that we're not even seeing? Is it making it a easier website? Is it making the sign up process for all of the community programs easier? I don't know. I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but I'm just, I'm thinking out loud.
I will say we're open to suggestions.
Rick, did you have a question?
Could you go back to the first slide on the golf course a minute?
Yeah.
I just have one question there. On the personal services down there, you had said something about that $1 million, and it was construction related?
The change year over year. So we kept staff on, and they worked on converting the golf course. So it became part of what we could capitalize. So what happened with that is the cost that we could capitalize came out of that personal services line. So we were able to do that in 2017, not in 2018. So that's the difference, the increase that you're seeing there.
So that'd be like the GM and the superintendent, or?
I think it's more for growing. So it would be more of our, the maintenance crew that we're maintaining for the growing of the new courses, the renovated courses.
So then, Andrea, the budget on that would have probably been just because 17 was lower. They didn't factor.
It was
the
a tough
facts.
budget because we'd never really dealt with what would happen when we shut down the golf course. And you do see variances line by line. I guess at the end of the day, bottom line, pretty close.
Right, yeah, so it's more of the budgeting, like you mentioned on that other one, where you're working to get the actuals in the budget in closer alignment for the comparisons going forward, right?
It was a tough budget, just not knowing what would really happen when we
Yeah.
closed it down.
Okay.
And I would just like to add too, we did think that we were going to be able to open the golf course in the fall of 2018. So that would probably impact those numbers as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Everyone's good? Thank you, Andrea. Appreciate it. Okay, next up, Braemar Arena and Field update. Chad, welcome.
Thank you. Just give me a second here while I pull up my
No
presentation. Okay, do you have it up? The presentation? Good. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. I'm Chad Ishins. I'm the general manager at Braemar Arena and Field. My presentation is kind of two parts. The first part is going to talk about the arena and the second part about the dome. So feel free to jump in with questions at any time here. We've had a nice year at Braemar Arena. We've had a slower month here after the high school season has ended. And this weekend we're going to host our first of our many spring and summer tournaments. A lot of the slides will look similar here. We go into staffing and some budgetary numbers and some up-and-coming events and things like that. Our full-time staff, we have a great staff all the way across the board. I'm very proud of all of them and the work that they put in. We have 7 full-time staff members. 3 of us are in the office, and 4 of them are maintenance staff. Those 7 full-time staff run both the arena and the dome, so they're shared between those facilities and from a budget perspective as well. We do employ a lot of part-time people. We have guest services, Zamboni drivers, arena maintenance, skate school instructors, there's where one is right there, and concession stand workers as well. The numbers look a little bit high, but a lot of these people are very part-time. They may be college students who come back during winter break or Thanksgiving break, spring break, pick up a shift or two. And staffing is always something that we're constantly working with HR, finding good people, bringing new people on board. There is a high amount of turnover, so that's always a goal of ours, to keep the good people that we have, and I think we're doing a nice job of that. We're very fortunate at the arena. We get to host a lot of really neat events. We get highlighted in a lot of hockey and figure skating press. Of course, the Beauty League is always a great time. Our high school teams had just outstanding seasons, and I know that they were recognized, I believe, at your last Parks meeting. Very fortunate to have them. Skate shows coming up here the first weekend of May. Tickets are on sale, if I could put in a little plug there. They always do a nice job with the skate show. They also have a competition coming up in June. 14 youth hockey tournaments keeps us going over the weekends and holidays. Again, we get a lot of very nice press, both locally and nationally, with Netflix, YouTube, NHL Network, ESPN. All the local radio and TV stations know about us, and they're all very fair to us as well. The last bullet point there is people counters. We're very excited about our people counters, believe it or not. And the people counters do exactly what they are called. They count people. So we gave the dome a test run, and I'll share some dome numbers with you, but we also recently installed them at the arena because we were very curious to know how many people are actually coming in to our facilities. And on the dome side, this started as a staffing because we didn't think we were going to find enough staff. So we wanted to identify when were our busy times, when were our slower times, and could we adjust our staffing accordingly. On the arena side, we're hoping to get some good numbers so that we can drive revenue, so that I can say X number of people come into this arena every year. We can put a number with that, working with our salespeople, with our advertising. We've had a number of projects this year throughout the arena. Many of them are focused around our recommissioning study that we did. And I have to give a lot of credit to Tara Brown, the city's sustainability coordinator, for helping us out with that. The good and the bad of the arena is that it's an energy hog. It takes a lot of energy to keep a big ice cube cold, which gave us the opportunity to work with Tara on some of these energy reduction projects. So when you're seeing the LED lighting, VFDs, variable frequency drives, those go on our pumps to help them run more efficiently. Upgrading to some computer controls on the refrigeration system. Those are all items that Tara helped us pay for through the city's sustainability fund. And as you see at the bottom there, over $227,000 was spent just at the arena on sustainability projects this last year, with a couple more on the way. So we're very thankful of that. Our next slide talks about some of our usage and our financials, and that kind of ties in with Andrea's previous presentation. I would say generally across the board, our numbers are looking good. We can always do better, and we're always looking at ways that we can maximize our time and our revenue as well. Yeah, that's a good question. So the building rental line item is our lease tenants on the Hornet's Nest side of the building. And one of the tenants had a lease adjustment that we were visiting about in 2017, and that came to fruition in 2018, and so they owed us some back money from 2017. That number should settle out in 2019 and going forward. All right, some upcoming projects at the arena. Again, we're going to try to take this recommissioning study and help it refine our operations with what temperature we keep our ice at, how long our lights are on, how fast can we run our motors and things like that. And then we also have the ability to draw statistics out of that, and Tara can help us do that. We're consolidating our alarm monitoring. At one point, I think we had 6 or 7 different alarm monitoring companies. So we have, motion alarms, burglar alarms. If our refrigeration system quits in the middle of the night, we get a phone call. If our ammonia starts to leak, we get a phone call. So there's all these different companies. So we're working on consolidating that. We're looking forward to getting a work order system in place for our maintenance staff, so that if a light bulb burns out, we can enter that into a work order system so it doesn't get lost in the daily shuffle. All of our major events are returning for 2019 and beyond. We do intend on doing a closure of our East Arena towards the end of August and into September. It's a planned shutdown for maintenance. We try to shut down one of our rinks every year to give it a little rest, give us a chance to do a deep clean, some painting, replace some flooring and things like that. So that's going to be a long one. That's going to be almost a month that rink is going to be closed. And then lastly, we're looking at adding some electronic concession signage, very similar to what Edinburgh has done. And we have a plan in place with communications, and we just need to find some money to do that. So, Mr. Chair, I believe that's the last slide of the arena. Now would be a good time to take some questions on the arena.
Sounds good. Questions on Braemar Arena?
Chad, one question on the Beauty League. You said that's signed through when?
So we have a commitment for them into the summer of 2019, and I know that they are in talks with some sponsors to secure some additional funding for the league and keep it at Braemar for a longer period of time.
Do you feel that there's any competition with their new TRIA rink that they've got over in St. Paul?
I do not think so. TRIA has a smaller seating capacity than the West Arena. There's also parking issues at the TRIA rink. I know that we've given some consideration to like the University of Minnesota. Would Mariucci or Ritter Arena be competition for us? And again, I think you run into some of those same issues with parking and the cost of the rental and some of the other things that go along with those larger facilities.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
Bryn?
Do you guys factor in the use of the outdoor rink into East, or is that considered separate facility, or how do you?
That's
put that
a
into-
separate.
Okay.
Yep, it would be a separate rink if we look at them individually. But when we look at our usage statistics, that's all lumped together.
Okay, and then on the revenue breakdowns, what would be under the miscellaneous category?
So we tried to hit the larger items. Under miscellaneous revenue, there's miscellaneous retail sales, advertising sales, skate sharpening, which we don't even do anymore, vending sales, season tickets, spectator fees, so we get a little split of the high school gate, that's spectator fees. Daily skating fees, so that's like your open skating, $5 in the morning for developmental. And then a category called other rental, which would be room rentals and things like that.
Chad, if I could take you back one page on your utilization, I'd be interested in your insight on what would you consider to be fully utilized. So I know if we're running a factory, we really can't say we can get to 100%, but maybe it's 85, maybe it's 90, depending upon the asset. What would you look at for your, I mean, at 79% prime time, do you consider yourself fully utilized, or is there still more opportunity to rent space out?
You always want to see more, right? 100% is kind of the goal. But if you're running a facility the right way, you know that you're going to have to carve out some time for maintenance. Speaking for the arena and the dome, really, it's when I left at 5 o'clock, we were busy. All three rinks were going. Mm-hmm. All three rinks are going to be busy from 5 o'clock to 11 o'clock tonight. It's that school time, that 9 a.m. to 3 o'clock, which is considered non-prime, that's tough to fill because you don't have the youth to fill that time. Some of the other opportunities would be a 3 to 4 o'clock time period. That tends to be pretty slow. But again, it's tough to get kids from school there. It's tough to get adults to skate during that time as they're at work. And then occasionally we have open time slots later in the evening. Again, that's more geared towards adults. But a lot of times adults got to get up in the morning. They don't want to start skating at 10 o'clock at night either.
So would you look at these numbers and say overall you're relatively well satisfied with where we are, or are there particular aspects that you'd say I'm really kind of bothered by why we can't get it to this level?
I would like to try to get to 85%. I think that would put a smile on my face.
Okay. 85% on prime
of
or
prime,
on total?
Of prime,
Yep.
Yeah. The other thing that we've done is we now have a marketing person dedicated to the enterprise facilities. And that will be a focus on our budget in 2020 and 21. We've got a pretty small marketing budget right now. Mm-hmm. But I think that she has done a good job with working with Chris Roddy, our assistant general manager, of putting together a good marketing plan with limited funds. So I'm hoping that we can pump a little bit more money into our marketing, be a little bit smarter with our marketing, use some of the data that we can derive out of Facebook and Twitter and some of these digital media marketing opportunities, and drive some of the prime and non-prime opportunities that we have.
Okay, thanks.
So Chad, on that, with that, so the non-prime, you had a 10-point increase over 2 years, which seems pretty impressive. What drove that? What drove that change?
I don't know that I can specifically point to any one area. One of the things that I would point out is that I came on board in 2016, August of 2016. So how events were scheduled or perhaps marked on our calendar may have been different under the previous general manager to how we do things right now. So there could be a little bit of that. I do know that our skate school is very popular, and it's growing. And if we could find more instructors, I think we could fill more time. So that is one thing that stands out in my mind, is that our skate school has grown, and some of that happens during midday afternoons.
Okay, great. So what's the prime time again? Did you say that's like 4 to 11?
Prime fluctuates a little bit season to season, but generally prime is from September 15th to March 15th. And it's the after school hours, the 3 o'clock to 11 o'clock at night.
Okay.
And then Saturdays and Sundays, it's 7 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Okay, good, thanks.
In summer, it flips a little bit, where the prime will be kind of during the course of the day, non-prime shifts to the evening.
Just had a couple questions. One, have you guys accounted for any traffic expectations with General Sports on 50th and France closing and then moving a lot of their operations to the facility next to the arena?
Yeah, we have had conversations with General Sports. We're aware of the closure of the 50th and France location, and they are moving all the retail operations over to the Hornets Nest side of our building. Some of their other salespeople will remain in a different office location nearby. Common sense, I think, would say that traffic should increase at that location. And it's something that we have our eye on, looking at some parking, perhaps adding some more parking for them. But then also, how can we help kind of cross-market and let people know that that's happened, and when they come to the arena, they'll now have an expanded selection of retail items for purchase.
Okay, and then two other ones. I alluded to it a little bit, but part of the Beauty League, and one of those things is we have beer for sale, or some of the other junior tournaments and stuff. Have you seen that to be a positive? Has it been operational headache? What has your experience been so far?
So Susan, remind me, but before I came on board, there was one tournament that had alcohol sales, beer sales. Since that time, we have not had alcohol sales at the arena.
Oh, okay. And the last one was around the outdoor rink in the dome. You know, we did all that landscaping and things like that. And I was just wondering if there's been any budget or time now that minus the snowstorm that's coming, but once everything kind of cleans out, to start looking at some of it's been a couple of years and the outdoors can be tough on it, but some of the touch-ups on some of the benches and the rock and the wood and, those types of things. Is there been any talk about that? And
yeah, I'll actually have a photo coming up here in the dome presentation. You'll see the gabion seating areas at the dome were just replaced this week by our public works staff. Yeah, they put some concrete benches on there. They look really nice. And if that holds up to the wear and tear, I think our plan would be to do that by the backyard rink as well. And then we also have a small landscaping area on the north side of the backyard rink, south side of the dome. It gets really hit hard with rainwater coming off the facilities, so we need to look at a better solution for the landscaping in there. It looks pretty ugly.
Any other questions?
Just
Mike?
one from me. When you say that trying to get to 85% utilization would make you happy, would you say that last 5 or 6 percentage points is the interstitial times, the odd things that you can't block out, that just pops up here and there? Would that be a true statement?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. So generally, practices will run on the hour. So a practice runs from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and then we have a 10-minute ice make. So from 6 o'clock to 6:10, the Zamboni is out on the ice. The next practice can start at 6:10 to 7:10. We make ice, and then it's 8:20 to 9:20. So there's always this 10-minute gap, which is part of that number that you'll never get to 100%.
Right.
And if you think about, there'll be 5 or 6 of those 10-minute gaps, so that adds up to an hour pretty quickly, times 3 rinks. So you've got 3 hours a day right there that you won't sell just with Zambonis on the ice.
But I guess what I'm asking is it's you can block in high school games and high school practices, chunk. But is it the odd other times, off times, it's 1 hour? Like it's 1 hour maybe every other week, or something gets canceled. Those are the ones that if you could kind of fill in all those little cracks, if that would help you get there. And I ask that because is it a matter of, I've never tried to schedule ice there, but is it a matter of marketing, or is it a matter of just making it easier for the odd person to find that last minute spot and maybe schedule it and grab it? Again, I don't know how hard it is or what you guys do to schedule, but.
It could really be a little bit of both, because, let's take the high school as an example. They'll play their JV game at 5 o'clock. Okay, so from 5 o'clock till 10 o'clock at night, that's blocked out for a high school game. So we can squeeze in a practice before that 5 o'clock puck drop. Okay, so we can go from about 4 to 5 with the practice, but then we still have that 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock time slot, which isn't very attractive because we can't get kids over, and yet that hour counts as prime ice under our definition. And then there'll be other times where somebody will say, you know what, my coach can't get there until 6 o'clock at night. We have to start at 6 o'clock at night. So you may have a half an hour, 45-minute gap between one practice and that 6 o'clock when my coach can get there.
And is it easy for others to see those available times?
Yes, absolutely, yep. People can always call our office and we can give them the most up-to-date information. And also on our website, our scheduling software is linked right to our website. So as soon as we make a change on the backside to the scheduling software, it shows up on the public side of our website and people can see that.
Okay.
People regularly troll the website looking for open time.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay, good. Thanks, Chad.
Okay, so we'll jump over to the Braemar Field, Braemar Dome here. Again, great staff here, shared staff for the full-time with the arena. We have approximately 25 part-time guest services. Some of those are also shared with the arena. Again, some are very, very part-time. I would say out of that 25, there's probably 12 that are real regular. If you look at that photo there with Tracy and Fred, you can see the gabion seating that I referred to. You can see the cement top there. Again, the concrete department and Public Works did a great job with these. They are stamped and colored to look like the rock that is in the gabions themselves. Okay, some of our highlights. This is where the people counters come in. So I know that the December through March we had almost 75,000 people come through our main entrance, which is I was shocked the first time that I saw a month worth of numbers. Our monthly numbers have been somewhere between 16,500 and just over 20,000 people coming through those doors in 1 month. And then we also get a lot of walkers. It's one of the things that I really enjoy about the Dome is that it's open to the public basically from 6 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night for walkers and runners. And you really get to know those people. You see the same faces at 6 o'clock in the morning, the 7 o'clock runners, the group that comes in at 10 o'clock, or the group that prefers to walk at night. So it's a great amenity, and people continue to come in and say, wow, we never knew about this. So we need to do a better job of getting the word out there about the walking track and its availability throughout the winter season. I think we made some real positive changes to our family night and open dome. I know that was a bit problematic last year with families with young kids having to worry about football players and soccer players, and that wasn't working very good. So now we've split those up. We've got an hour for family night and then an hour and a half for open dome. And there's been a lot less conflict, so I think that's a real win for us this year and something that we'll look at continuing. Open soccer continues to be very popular. That's played twice a week. Regularly 40 plus people in there playing open soccer. And then we've also noted anecdotally that our increase in drop-in traffic, those people that just stop in during the course of the day when the dome is open and pay $5 to use the field, has increased as well. The number of projects that we've undertaken this year, we've added 4 benches into the dome, and I think that was one of the recommendations that came out of this commission. We may be looking at adding 2 to 4 more for next year. They've moved around and people are using them, and that's what we want. The plugs and the covers for our lights are an important part of our operations, believe it or not. It's amazing how many of those get beat up. They get kicked and hit by balls and bags dropped on them and coats cover them up. We're actually going to be replacing 75 of those as part of our dome takedown. That's how many get bent. Of course, once they get bent, they start to fall out and then the lights don't work. We did a lot of work on our baseball mounds and screens. We got all new equipment there this year. Our keypad for the airlock fell apart, so we had to get a new one that will hold up to the elements a little bit better. The furnace in the lobby area died on us, of course, during some of the coldest times. So that heat exchanger got replaced as well and is working good. And then we also modified our HVAC program for the dome blower unit itself. So here you have our usage and our financial numbers. Again, I think these look pretty good and they're fairly consistent across the board. The non-prime is low, but very similar to the arena. We run into that 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. time period where it's tough to get associations and different types of groups that cater to youth to use the facility. The good news there is that it really opens it up to walkers and the average person that just wants to come in and use the field. Our revenue tends to be fairly consistent as well. And we do have a number of miscellaneous categories there also. A lot of that miscellaneous revenue comes from the fees that the association and soccer club pays per participant to help with the replacement of the dome and turf when that time comes due. Some upcoming events, we are looking at a new controller for our HVAC system in the dome. I think many of you are aware that we've had some cold days in the dome this year, and that's not lost on us. We think we have some things under control. I'm probably the only person looking forward to some snow and cold weather because I want to test what we have done, and that's really the only way to do it. But it's also something that we need to keep our eye on because I'm not 100% sold on the system, and it's also a system that's proprietary, which makes it difficult for other contractors to work on. So we're gonna continue to explore that, and if it's something that we want to explore, it's certainly an item that we'll need to budget for. We're going to be hosting a turf maintenance seminar. That's probably going to be in September. I very much enjoyed the group of dome managers that we've gotten together. There's about a dozen to 15 of us that get together probably on a bi-monthly basis, and we talk about domes and how we maintain them and how we program for them, and turf maintenance is part of that, so we'll be hosting that over at Braemar Field. We need to do some work on our soccer netting. We'll get that replaced hopefully this spring. And then we also had a nice conversation recently on a group that's looking to start a new softball league, so that would be a new user for us, helping us with some downtime on weekends and also during the holidays. So that's my presentation on the dome. Again, now would be a good time for questions.
Matt?
Just 2 quick ones. Around the netting, is it replacing what's existing, or is it replacing what's existing and then also maybe doing some new layout? I ask because for soccer, for full field, the way the netting is in there now, the netting that's hanging all the time is actually hanging technically inside the field. So are you going to look at ties? I know with the walking path and the promise of that being around open 24 hours or open all the time, that the dome's open for walkers, there might be some issues. But I just was curious, just because I know that that's one of the things I hear from the families that play soccer in there.
So some of that perimeter netting will need to get replaced. It's starting to tear a little bit. I would have to do a little bit more research to see if we could relocate that, just because of how it's attached to the dome and what that might look like in terms of dome penetrations and attachment to the fabric itself.
Got it. And then the other one I had was more curious. Have you had any, what has your experience been with some of the associations? I think the thing for me as a user of the dome, my issue with is if like you go in after the baseball association has had something in there and there's always a base left, or their wire boxes are left open, or they're out in the place, or the lacrosse nets are in the middle of the field, and those are sometimes difficult to move. And I'm assuming that the expectations of the associations was to clean up after themselves, so to speak. So have you had any interactions with them? What is your level of satisfaction with those interactions, or level of satisfaction with what they've been doing?
So specifically about things being left on the field and kind of picking up your toys, if you will, that is the responsibility of the user. And if your time ends at 8 o'clock, that means your toys need to be picked up at 8 o'clock. That's not when you start picking up your toys. And that's just respect for the next user. And if those things happen, groups and people get along pretty well. I haven't heard too much about individual instances, but if there are certain groups, certain people that are failing to do their duty in that regard, certainly let our staff know so that we can address that with the specific person, the user, the association.
Other questions?
With the snow, when do you expect that thing to come down?
Not with the snow, we hope.
No.
With the snow,
Not this
I'm sure
weekend.
that
It
pushes
cannot come
back,
down this weekend.
That pushes back your date. So now what is the date for the dome to come down this year?
So the last user in the dome is the last Sunday in April, which I believe is the 29th. And then the actual takedown date is the first Saturday in May, which I believe is the 4th. And all of that is always pending weather. You can't do if it's snowing, if it's raining, if it's too windy.
Got it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Chad. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Very nice update. Okay, next up on our agenda, Susan with a update for us on the Fred Richards Playground.
Yeah, so at the March meeting, MJ Lehman was here and kind of gave the commission a preview of our new Better Together Edina, the online engagement tool. And, thinking about that, I just wanted to make sure that the commission we had a conversation about how the Fred Richards Playground happened right now. And I wasn't sure if we had discussed that previously. So I just wanted to give just a really kind of brief update on how we kind of are to where we are with adding this playground at Fred Richards. So throughout the CIP process, the city has different representatives that sit on it's our CIP committee. And through those conversations is when it was suggested that this might be the right time to add the playground. This was part of the approved 2017 when council approved and you all weighed in on the overall Fred Richards master plan. So this is what we're calling just phase one of that project. We secured $300,000 of CIP funding that we can spend this year on adding a playground, some walkways that will connect to the sidewalk right on Park Lawn. We'll also be doing some native restoration around the pond that's there. And then if we still have the funding, we'll add a gathering or a picnic shelter in that area. So we're really excited that we're going to be able to implement this part. We did do an an RFP. We had 7 proposals that we received from different playground vendors. We have selected Minnesota-Wisconsin Playground. They're a company out of Golden Valley. We have worked with that company on a few of our different playgrounds. The most recent was at Roslyn Park. So right now, we are in the midst of our public participation. So if you haven't already, I would encourage you to get online on our Better Together website, fill out the survey. If you have children, we would love to get feedback from kids on what they would like to see. We also have an open house that is scheduled tomorrow night. Great timing. It was supposed to be at the park. We have moved it to the Cedars, which is on Gallagher, so it will be inside. But we're hoping there to get quite a bit of feedback from the neighborhood. And then after we get our original feedback, we will do a second online survey just to get some additional feedback from the community.
Questions for Susan? Rick?
Of the 300, do you know approximately the playground cost?
Yeah, we are planning a budget of about $120,000. And that would include all of our play features as well as the safety surface.
So that's different than the Arden Park number?
Actually,
A lot less, or?
it's about the same.
Is it?
Yeah, that was the same project budget that we used for the playground at Arden Park.
I just think that in that neighborhood, the usage will probably be a little bit higher than at Arden Park, though.
Yeah, and I think as we receive feedback from the community, we can make some modifications. We are hoping to maybe receive some additional funding through our engineering department for some of the native restoration work. So if we're able to get some assistance with that portion of the project, we might be able to use more of that overall project budget on the playground.
Other questions? Julie?
With each new playground, you are including an accessibility feature, correct? And that would be part of the budget as well.
Yeah, we are. So the playground at Roslyn is kind of what we consider 100% wheelchair accessibility, barrier-free. When looking at adding playgrounds in the future, we are going to be looking at all of the different like sensory components, but we may not look at a 100% wheelchair accessibility. With that, it's just a lot more expensive. It would have to be a different safety surface. It would be the poured-in-place safety surface is what would be that, or like the turf that we have at Roslyn. And we'd need a much larger container because there's a lot of ramping, which takes up a little bit more space.
Can I follow up? But looking at the parks, even with the parks now that have like pea gravel, right? There are still some, I don't know if we call it poured in place, but there's some of the safety surface that is the more accessible surface. And would that be included? Like I'm thinking like at Chowan Park, there's a pea gravel, but then there's the sort of spongy, harder surface from the sidewalk path to a couple of key features within the park. Is that something that we're doing at every playground?
Yeah, so all of the new playgrounds that we will add, we will either choose an engineered wood fiber. That is what we have at a lot of the playgrounds. We have it at Pamela Park. That's what we added at the newer Weber Park playground. That is completely ADA accessible. The pea gravel we will not be using moving forward. That is not considered ADA right now.
A couple things, Susan. First of all, thank you for putting this on our agenda because it was a bit surprising to see Fred Richards Playground pop up after we had put Fred Richards on our suggested work plan and the city council asked us to remove it. So it was a bit of a surprise. So I appreciate hearing the explanation on that. Second, we always get asked this, so I'm curious on how we are proactively reaching out to the community from which we want input to make sure they're aware of the survey, aware of tomorrow's open house, aware of how they can give input.
Yeah, so we're really trying to direct everyone, and we've had a really big push for the Better Together with project sites. We are doing some social media posts, and we have proactively reached out to the neighborhood through some of the neighborhood contacts for the Fred Richards, the playground.
Okay. And then lastly, any expectation from us as a commission on what input, help, involvement you need?
Yeah, I think filling out the surveys, talking to family, friends that live in the community who use playgrounds. I mean, I think the more feedback that we can get on what people would like to see, I mean, specifically with features, whether it's swings, slides, climbing, specific with ages, I think that would be really helpful for us right now.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Okay, next we'll roll into another playground discussion, Arden Park.
So I just have a really brief update for Arden Park. I know, again, at the March meeting, Laura was here from the Watershed District and did a pretty comprehensive update on phase 1 of the construction project. Right now we're in that pause, waiting for frost to get out of the ground. We have the load restrictions, so we're unable to be big heavy trucks going in and out of the park. They will be starting on some of the trail work and the boardwalk and bridges soon. We have, since our last meeting, taken out the old hockey rink, so those boards are gone, and then late summer our park maintenance team will work on installing the new boards. But the one thing I did want to touch on is, so we did take the playground to council last week and asked council to approve the request for purchase. And it was tabled. So I will be going back to the city council meeting next week. There were some questions from the council and the mayor on the type of playground. I think wanting to know why we aren't adding a playground like Roslyn at that site. So, there's a couple factors that we took into consideration. One is was the project budget that we were given, but the second one really is the location. There's no parking near Arden Park, and if we're going to be adding a playground specifically, well, not specifically designed, but for wheelchair accessibility 100%. And not have any handicap parking or any parking stalls. I think that would be a real challenge. And I think the other challenge, what we heard from the neighborhood is they wanted, and it was important to the neighborhood to have this be a neighborhood park project. And if by adding a much larger playground that would be 100% barrier-free, I do feel like it would be attracting people from all over the metro, which would increase traffic, and it would present a parking situation for us. The other piece is we tried to fit in that container into a specific location, and some other trees may be impacted if we would have to increase the size of the overall playground container. So I'm hopeful that we'll get support next week. If not, if we receive the direction that the council wants us to pursue more of a completely barrier-free, then we'll work with that.
Questions?
So what are the two paths? What's the outcome if they decide to go with ADA compliant? Are they considering parking? And I don't think they are. So then are we going to take into consideration the community comment and have this amenity that is very attractive to a segment of the population, causing increasing traffic, and then an additional feedback that says it's really nice, but we can't get to it?
Yeah, Matt, and there weren't any other further conversations. I do think we will have some of those conversations next week. As we're looking at replacing playgrounds, we can look at other parks that are maybe on the north side that have better parking, or at least would have the ability to add more parking. So, we will have some opportunities, I think, for that, those types of playgrounds moving forward at a different location.
And then my other question then is the other path, which is if you create something that's not ADA compliant, which I think we are all in agreement that we want to make something that's available to all, right? But if we go that route, what are we as a community, are we in accordance with what the expectations of the ADA Act is asked us to do?
Yeah, so this playground is going to be completely ADA compliant. It'll be serving 99% of our users. It's really just the 1%. So you wouldn't be able to, if you were in a wheelchair, you wouldn't be able to go to the very top on your own. That's kind of what the difference would be. You could get some assistance in transferring, so you still, if someone were in a wheelchair, they still would be able to use the playground. There's a lot of different pieces. It's just the transfer with the ramping that is the difference.
Got it. Thank you.
The other approach I might take on this, Susan, thinking about the question of why isn't this playground like Roslyn? The first thing is that might beg that question to be asked at every park we're putting a playground in, right? So immediately we ought to also ask the question about Fred Richards, if that's truly the direction they're driving. Should every park have a playground like Roslyn? The other issue could be if we believe we should have another playground somewhere like Roslyn, then that leads it down a different path, which is let's look at the parks where that might be a better fit. So I think I'd want to be careful on what that kind of leads us or pushes us into.
Agreed.
The other would be, I think it's a good time for us to do a bit of work, just compare and contrast what we're doing and planning at Arden with what we're doing and planning at Fred Richards. Right? This is a perfect time that we're doing both of them at the same time for kind of the same basic end result. So let's make sure that our approach to both is not just in the area of equity, but is making sure that we're asking the right questions and getting the right solution. Any other questions, comments on Arden? Okay. Thank you, Susan, for both of the playground updates. It's good to hear that we're making progress on them. Next up is annual work plan updates. I know I've heard from a few of you on some anecdotal inputs, questions, concerns, so let's just kind of take a quick run through each one and see if we have any particular updates. First, initiative number 1.
Yeah, I took the lead for the Parks and Recs group that will be a part of it. We had a communication Susan had forwarded to us from the Human Rights and Relations Commission. So I followed up, tried to put together a meeting. We're still in the process of scheduling that. I would assume it'll happen in the next couple of weeks. And I think the goal of that is just to kind of assign, roles and responsibilities, as well as just kind of, overview what it is that we're trying to accomplish with this. And if they have a building that they're already kind of targeting, or an area that they're kind of targeting, and how we can work together with that.
And just for good order's sake, initiative number 1 was renaming a public facility in the Grandview area after the Yanceys. So thank you, Matt. Initiative number 2, cross-commission committee on identifying barriers for participation in programming. Any updates on that one?
So we've had a couple communications, one from Susan and then one from MJ. And we are waiting for the Human Rights and Relations Commission lead to reach out to us. I think that last communication, Susan, was about a week and a half ago, something like that. So hopeful that that's going to be picking up soon.
Okay. Initiative number 3, another cross-commission committee to develop a draft plan on Edina Grand Rounds, including wayfinding. Similar story, I just had reached out literally just recently today. I was looking at the Transportation Commission, who's our partner on that, to see if they had anybody named in previous meetings. Didn't look like they had anyone named yet as a contact, so I've reached out to their liaison to see if we have a lead we can work with on that to begin to get that one moving. Initiative number 4, study and report on fields, courts, rinks capacity and utilization. So Matt and I have been working on that, and Bryn, were you going to help on that as well, or was it Aiden? Aiden was, yep, Aiden was.
Yeah, I think Val was helping us before, and she
Yep.
was with, I think it was Tiffany that was helping with it. So
Yes.
I think we need to revisit with Tiffany and just kind of figure out. It's more just kind of, I thought it was specific to this one. I thought it was really interesting to see the usage stuff from both the Braemar Arena and the field, as well as some of the stuff that was in the financial documents that they're measuring it now. They have a more way of accurate measuring it. So when you get to some of the stuff that Mike was asking about, which is what is the prime time? What is it that we're not using? How do we try and figure out ways to do that? I think that this all kind of comes together at the right time.
No, I agree. And I went back and looked over some of the material that we had gathered from last year, and I think now it's just for us putting it into a framework of how do we measure it, how do we assess it, how do we communicate it. So, good. Initiative number 5, alternative funding options for future growth and development. Mike?
Since the last meeting, we have not been able to get together, so not much progress to report today, but hopefully next meeting we will have everybody back and we'll be able to get going again.
Good, thank you. Initiative number 6, review and comment on the race and equity policy statement developed by city staff. We kind of have a developed by city staff as a first step, I think, in that path. So is that still what we're waiting on?
Yep, Susan, I think, has an update. It sounds like they're in process of updating that, and so they'll reach out to us when they're ready.
Correct, yeah. So staff have started on that process. We're going to be working with some of our enterprise facilities, and then the city just hired our new race and equity coordinator. So we want to make sure to tie Heidi in as well to this. So in progress.
Good. And then initiative number 7, another cross-commission committee to look at completing requirements for Edina to receive the AARP city designation. Any updates on that one?
I don't have an update on that. That's going to be led by the Community Health Commission, but actually haven't seen anything on this one. So.
Okay. All right. Well, some work yet to be done on most of them, but especially those that are cross-commission. I think that's a great attempt for us to make sure that we're doing more, but it also means things tend to ebb and flow, and right now we're a little bit in a churn to get it started. So where we do have the lead, let's make sure that we are reaching out and trying to get those connected and kicked off. Next up on our agenda would be chair and member comments. Any comments from other commissioners?
I have a question. We have a work plan meeting with the council. I think that's what it's called.
First week in May, correct?
First week in May. Any idea what we're going to do? Any idea what we can prepare for?
Well, the intent, Susan, I think is mainly around the work plan updates, right? So we'll take some of what we just got covered today, what's worked well, what hasn't worked well. I think it's a little bit of learning still on the cross-commission attempts that it will be good feedback to give them. And hopefully over the next 3 weeks, we have a few more inputs coming into some of those activity initiatives.
So we're going to kind of try to cover everything.
If it works the way it did tonight, we'd get through all of them. I think what we'll probably do is prioritize them a little bit to try to say, well, what do we think we should be providing to the city council that they ought to hear about, and see where it goes from there.
Okay.
I just jumping on that too. If we're gonna, if it is a little bit lighter, just because of the ebbs and flows, as you said, Greg, is there an opportunity for us to have dialogue with the city council at that point around? I'll use this as an example, the Fred Richards thing. So we were asked a parking lot at the city council, approved to go through the phase 1. They approved funding. They're moving forward. On behalf of myself, I was surprised. I don't think we were communicated to. Not that maybe they didn't have to, I don't know, but it would make sense to me that there would have been some communication with us. So I'm wondering if we have time, since we're allotted 50 minutes, is that the amount of time? Is there an opportunity to do some dialogue? Because I know that in the past we've talked about, like, can the city council help us prioritize what it is that they really are looking for our lead and guidance on?
I think that'd be a good one as well. That was on my list also. So let's keep that on the table. Okay. Any other comments? I've got a couple just to make. One, we have noted on a couple of these initiatives that Val Burke has been a member. I also did want to tell the broader commission that there was a decision made over the last couple months that we would no longer have a formal role for Edina Public School representation on the park. It's one that's been discussed before. We've tried a few different things. Val stepped up and was willing to work with us last year. A number of things happened on just the fact that she still had school commitments, meeting commitments, our commitments, personal life commitments. So first off, I just want to say publicly to thank Val for the work that she did, the effort that she exhibited and provided in participating and giving us some inputs. Matt, she also did say that she's available to help with us on our initiative, so she's not stepping away from that either. But there is a formal decision made, and I believe approved by City Council as well, that that position will no longer be a formal required position. I believe Val will still be considered the person filling it on an open basis, so if we ask for her input or if she has an opportunity, she may show up on a month and participate, and she's certainly welcome to do so. But she has not been able to be present over the last few meetings, so I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that and just publicly say thank you to her for her time and effort. Let's see, second, I think Susan is going to cover my other second comment, so I won't touch on that right now. We did bring up the fact that it looks like it's going to snow again tomorrow and continue for maybe a couple days, so we haven't quite shed winter yet, so keep your winter mindset on, be safe, and whatever you might be doing. Susan, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I just have a few updates. We have a lot of events. We're kind of heading into spring and summer when I think our department is full swing. But on April 27th, we have our Barnyard Babies event. It's going to be at Roslyn Park from 10 to noon. If you haven't been and you have younger children, it's a really fun event. It's a full-size petting zoo, pony rides, some arts, music, usually a pretty fun event. On May 4th is Vehicle Day. That will be held from 10 to noon at Southdale. It's the big fire trucks, snow plows, police garbage trucks. Again, a fun event for kids. Today was our citywide cleanup. So all of our public works staff and park maintenance crews were out cleaning up parks, ditches, streets. So when you're driving home tonight, you should be looking at a much cleaner Edina. I know a lot of work goes into that. So Centennial Lakes. We started the bridges last fall, and due to weather, we weren't able to finish those. We were scheduled this coming Monday to start on some of the stonework, and that may have to be delayed just a bit with the snow. But we're still planning on finishing up that project by May 15th. There's not a lot left to do, so hopefully by middle of May, the bridges will be finished. We also have in April Arbor Day. Next week, Luther, our city forester, will be doing the Arbor Day proclamation. And then we're having an event at Countryside Park where he'll be planting 9 new trees. National Kids to Park Day is going to be May 18th. We'll be doing a proclamation for council next week. But we're doing something a little bit different this year to kind of celebrate that. And it's just a promotional, trying to get families and kids to our parks. So we're going to do a quiz on how well do you know Edina parks. And we'll be giving out some prizes from some of our free passes from some of our facilities. So again, if you want to go online, complete a quiz. You might get a free pass to the pool.
Oh, it's online, so we can have cliff notes and
You
look
can.
things up. We don't have to
There-
answer it in person.
There won't be a time limit on your
Okay.
on answers. And I think that's all that I have.
And then just a reminder, if I did my calendaring right, it's Tuesday, May 7th that we have our city council work. And what time is that?
At 5:30.
5:30. So 5:30 on the 7th up in the community room. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you all.